Now, we've got to talk about Harry and Meghan. And by the way, I know you've done a wonderful article. I saw it today online. It's posted on the News 24 website. I love your analysis of Meghan and Harry and their bullying allegations that have just been levelled at Meghan this week. But we've got to start with Prince Harry because some of his visa documents have been withheld in full by the US State Department. So the Heritage Foundation brought the case seeking records held by the department about the Duke, particularly in connection with his visa status and history of drug use. The first interim production seen by Newsweek paper identified 18 documents, all of which have been withheld, while the department continues to review almost 300 others. Now, we know that he spoke extensively about his drug use in Spare, very extensively and in mass detail. Donald Trump has always vowed to deport him because he claims, well, maybe he lied on his visa documents when he entered the US. But I think, Caleb, the fact that they are now withholding the documents, what does that tell you? Because to me that says they're looking into something. Something's a bit fishy.
Oh, you'd imagine so. I mean, because the US is so strict on this stuff. And I would say, look, if you're going to deport and prevent anyone who's ever taken drugs from entering the United States, I mean, that's a hell of a lot of people, right? Yeah. And so in reality, it's not entirely workable. But you come into a problem when you write and talk extensively about your drug use and then you're allowed into the United States. I mean, did he fill out the form and lie? Did he say that he had not used drugs? Or did he say that he had? And they let him in anyway? Because I'm sure there's a long line of people who've been denied entry to the United States who'd go, well, how did he? I can't go in, but he can. He's well admitted to his breaking of the law, and I couldn't go in. So did he get special treatment? And this business now, as you say, that they won't release the documents under freedom of information, it would lead you to think that they are looking into it. Perhaps they don't want to reveal anything just yet.
Yeah, maybe.
Because, look, if you've got investigations afoot, you might go, well, we'd rather break that news ourselves when we deport him.
When we get rid of him, yeah, that's right.
Than it turning up in the press. Because, of course, if it turns up in the press, then they'll have to act then and there, and, they might have 100 other problems to deal with. But when you've said so publicly that you've done it, it's kind of hard to argue against releasing that information.
Yeah,
but for someone who's in the public eye and admits that they've taken drugs but is in the US against the rules, seemingly, we sort of want to know.
No, we do want to know. We do want to know. So I'm very curious to know why they've withheld these documents. And another blow for the Sussexes. Again, another blow. And now we just got to talk about Meghan versus Martha Stewart because it's getting worse. So a royal insider has now weighed into this Martha Stewart dinner revelation regarding Meghan Markle, dubbing it the absolute worst thing that could have happened. So Martha Stewart claimed that Meghan had been heard boasting about her recent UK trip at an intimate gathering. However, a well-placed source dubbed it simply untrue. But now an insider has told Women's Day Harry's given his father everyone on the King's staff these assurances that he and Meghan will both be total vaults. And then this comes out. It is an absolute nightmare. Meghan is adamant that she absolutely wasn't sharing anything private or anything at all for that matter. But unfortunately, that doesn't really undo the damage that Martha's comments have done. Well, I don't know why she wanted to pick a fight in the first place with the Queen of Cooking and the Queen of the Home style, Martha Stewart, because Martha will traipse upon her 10 times over. And I think it is probably the worst thing that she could have done because, you got Meghan out there selling her jams, her dog biscuits and the rest of the palaver that comes with it, not doing very well, of course. Martha Stewart is the queen of selling such items. Why would you want to pick a fight with her, Caleb?
I thought I heard that you'd bought some of the dog biscuits, Danica.
No, I can tell you not. I wonder if she makes cat items because you've got cats, haven't you?
Colour cat.
You could give them a go in your household too.
I must have misheard that one. Sorry, Danica. So either Martha Stewart is lying or Meghan Markle is lying. And I tend to know who I think might be the liar.
Yeah.
Why would Martha Stewart lie about something like that?
I agree.
And she's a very motherly sort of figure, Everyone, what is she, 85 or something?
Must be, or close to it.
She's been in American media for a very long time, well-loved figure. Doesn't seem like the kind of woman who'd sort of unnecessarily stir up shit to me. So why would she come out and lie about Meghan Markle talking about her trip to see the royal family?
I agree. There would be no reason to lie.
Yeah, I don't get it. Now, the person who said, oh, well, absolutely didn't happen was allegedly the person who organised the dinner
Yeah.
that they were at. So they've clearly got a vested interest in saying, well, it didn't happen. I mean, presumably they're a friend of Meghan Markle's. So they're trying to protect her and say, oh, well, it definitely didn't happen. But I don't understand why Martha Stewart would make up that Meghan Markle had been talking about the royal family at dinner.
I agree.
And, of course, it's a big problem if she has, because the rules are well-established rules. You don't talk about the firm and the discussions that you have with the firm.
No.
And particularly at a time when Harry is trying to rekindle his relationship with his father, it would be an extremely dumb thing to do unless Meghan herself sort of doesn't want this reformation to happen.
I don't think she does. She wants to stay in the US.
And so, you go to dinner and strategically say things so other people can overhear them. And then Martha Stewart says, well, she talked about it at dinner. Then it turns up in the press, strains the relationship between the King and Harry, and then Meghan rubs her hands and says, I guess he won't be going back to the UK after all. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of why all of this would have happened,
I mean,
right?
It's all about Meghan, isn't it? All about brand.
It's always been all about.
It's always been all about Meghan. So maybe this was her little decoy plan. But if you were the King, you'd be thinking, I'll just let you back into my household in a reunion a couple of weeks ago, and now you were going and talking about it. It's the ultimate betrayal again.
And in a room, it's one thing to go and talk directly to the press, but when you're talking in a room full of people who are well connected to the press, I mean, it's basically the same thing, right?
Yeah.
You should know better than that.
Yeah.
Prince Harry's US visa records are being withheld, and just when you thought his problems couldn't get any bigger, his relationship with King Charles appears to be hanging by a thread. Harry wanted a fresh start in America. Instead, his past is back under scrutiny. The US State Department has withheld 18 documents relating to Harry in the latest stage of a freedom of information battle over his immigration records, while hundreds of additional records remain under review. And before we go any further, let's make something absolutely clear. The withholding of these documents does not prove Harry did anything wrong. It does not prove he lied on his visa application. It does not prove he is about to be deported. And it does not tell us what is actually contained in those records. But it does raise questions. Questions that Harry's own public admissions about his past drug use have made impossible to ignore. And while America is asking questions about Harry's immigration history, there's another question waiting for him back in Britain. Can King Charles actually trust his son again? Because Harry may finally have his foot back in the door. But the door is not wide open, and it certainly isn't the same door Harry walked through before he left. So what exactly is going wrong? Why does every attempt Harry makes to move forward seem to produce another controversy? And perhaps the most uncomfortable question of all, is Harry his own worst enemy? Let's talk about it. The latest development comes from the long-running freedom of information battle over Harry's US immigration records. The Heritage Foundation has been seeking records relating to the Duke's visa and immigration history, including questions arising from his public discussion of past drug use. And now, according to court filings reported this week, the State Department's first interim production identified 18 responsive documents, and all 18 were withheld in full. The department cited legal exemptions relating to immigration confidentiality, privacy, and other protections. A further 289 records were reportedly still being reviewed. Inkel. Now, that sounds explosive. But here's where we need to slow down, because withheld does not mean damning. It simply means the government has decided those records cannot currently be released under the applicable exemptions. So we don't know what they say. And anyone claiming that these documents prove Harry committed an immigration offence is getting ahead of the evidence. But there is still a fascinating question here. because Harry himself discussed his drug history publicly in Spare. So naturally people want to know, what exactly did Harry disclose when he applied for his US visa? Did he disclose his history? Was he required to disclose it? Did US immigration authorities already know? And if they knew, what decision did they make? Those questions remain unanswered. And that is why this story isn't disappearing. And this is the irony. Harry and Meghan left Britain because they wanted a different life. They wanted freedom. They wanted independence. They wanted control. They wanted to step away from the machinery of the royal family. But Harry has discovered something rather painful. You can leave the institution without leaving the story behind, because Harry's life in America has been followed by one controversy after another. The Oprah interview, the Netflix documentary, Spare, the lawsuits, the security battle, the visa dispute, the endless debate about his relationship with his family, and now the immigration records. Harry may have escaped the palace, but he never escaped the scrutiny. In fact, in some ways, he may have created an even more complicated version of it. But here's where it gets really interesting, because Harry isn't simply fighting battles in America. He's trying to rebuild something in Britain, his relationship with his father. And this is where I think King Charles deserves a little more attention. Because there is a temptation to look at Harry's recent contact with Charles and say, Harry is back. But is he? I don't think so. What we're seeing looks much more cautious. Charles appears willing to see his son. He appears willing to have a private relationship with him. But that doesn't mean the king has suddenly forgotten everything that happened, and it certainly doesn't mean the entire royal family has been restored. The recent contact has been described as a step toward reconciliation, but Harry's relationship with his father remains delicate. Mirror. And perhaps that's exactly how it should be, because forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. Charles may have opened the door, but he hasn't handed Harry the keys. This is what I find fascinating. Charles doesn't appear to be saying, everything is forgiven, come back. He's saying something much quieter. You're my son. We can have a relationship. That's different. And perhaps Harry needs to understand that distinction. Because the relationship between a father and son doesn't have to mean the restoration of Harry's old royal position. It doesn't have to mean Meghan becoming a working royal. It doesn't mean returning to Frogmore. It doesn't mean a Netflix-style reunion. It doesn't mean photographs on the Buckingham Palace balcony. It could simply mean father and son rebuilding trust. And honestly, that's probably the only kind of reconciliation that has a chance of lasting. And just when Harry appears to be carefully rebuilding his relationship with his father, along comes the Martha Stewart controversy. Martha Stewart recently described an encounter with Meghan at a California dinner and said Meghan had been talking about her recent European trip and visit connected to the royal family. That immediately created a problem. Because if Harry is trying to rebuild trust with his father, the last thing he needs is another story suggesting private royal matters are being discussed socially. But here's the important part. That allegation has been disputed. A source who attended the dinner told people that Stewart's account was simply untrue, saying Meghan only briefly mentioned that her family had a great time on their trip and did not discuss the private royal meeting in detail. So we have two competing versions, Martha Stewart's account and another attendee's account. We don't know which is correct, and that's important. But the controversy itself tells us something. Harry's biggest vulnerability is trust. Why this is such a big deal for Harry? Think about it from Charles's perspective. Your son has spent years publicly discussing private family matters. Then, after years of estrangement, he finally comes to see you. You cautiously begin rebuilding that relationship. And now a story emerges suggesting that details of the reunion may have been discussed at a dinner party. Even if the allegation is completely false, that's exactly the kind of headline Harry doesn't need. Because rebuilding trust is incredibly fragile. It doesn't take much to damage it. And that's why Harry has to be extremely careful about what happens next. So, is Harry doing something wrong? This is where I think we need to ask a harder question, because it's very easy to say Harry is the victim. And perhaps sometimes he has been. But is he also responsible for some of the mess surrounding him? Absolutely. Look at the choices. Harry wanted to tell his story. He told it. Harry wanted the world to understand his side. He gave interviews. Harry wanted to explain his relationship with the royal family. He wrote Spare. Harry wanted accountability from the British press. He went to court. Harry wanted protection in Britain. He pursued his security case. Harry wanted a new life in America. And now his immigration history is being examined. Again. None of those things automatically means Harry was wrong, but they all have consequences, and that's the part Harry may have underestimated. What if Harry had done things differently? This is the question I really want to explore. Imagine Harry and Meghan left Britain in 2020 and simply said, "We need some time away. We want to raise our family privately. We love our family, but this is the life we're choosing." Then they move to California. They build their businesses. They work with charities. They raise Archie and Lilibet. And every now and then, Harry comes home. No Oprah. No Netflix revelations. No memoir detailing private family conversations. No public discussion about who said what. No repeated explanations. Would Harry and William still be estranged? Maybe. Would Charles still be hurt? Possibly. But would the damage have been as deep? Probably not, because there would have been fewer public bridges to burn. Harry may have confused telling his truth with fixing his life, and this might be Harry's biggest mistake. He may have believed that if he explained everything, people would understand. But sometimes explaining everything doesn't bring people closer. Sometimes it makes the wound deeper. Every revelation creates another headline. Every headline creates another argument. Every argument creates another grievance. And eventually, you're no longer discussing the original problem. You're discussing everything that happened afterward. That's where Harry seems to be now. And this is why Charles has to be careful. The king is in an incredibly difficult position. If he completely cuts Harry off, Harry can say, "I tried to reconcile. My father rejected me." And the public sympathy shifts toward Harry. But if Charles goes too far in the opposite direction and says, "Come home, everything is forgiven," then William inherits the problem. The monarchy inherits the problem. And every unresolved issue comes with them. So perhaps Charles has found the middle ground. Be a father, but also be the king. Love your son, but protect the institution. Forgive where possible. But don't pretend trust has magically returned. And that may be what Harry is struggling to understand. The bigger problem, Harry wants the result without the reset. Maybe Harry wants his family back. Maybe he genuinely misses his father. Maybe he wants Archie and Lilibet to have a relationship with their royal relatives. And if that's true, I actually think that's understandable. But Harry can't simply demand the old relationship back, because he changed the relationship, publicly, dramatically, permanently, and now he has to build something new, not restore the old version. What about William? because even if Charles forgives Harry, there is another relationship waiting, William, and that's a completely different problem. Charles is Harry's father, William is Harry's brother, but William is also the future king, and Harry's public revelations didn't just hurt Charles, they affected William, Catherine, and potentially the next generation of the royal family. That's why reconciliation with Charles does not automatically equal reconciliation with William. Harry could rebuild one relationship while another remains completely broken, and that could take years. Harry's biggest lesson may be silence. This is what I would tell Harry if I had 5 minutes with him. Stop explaining, stop defending, stop trying to win, stop worrying about what the headlines say. If you want your father back, be his son. Call him, visit him, keep his confidence. Don't discuss the conversations afterward. Don't brief journalists. Don't turn every meeting into evidence that reconciliation is happening. Just build the relationship, quietly. Because if Harry genuinely wants Charles to trust him, the proof won't be in another interview. It will be in what Harry refuses to say. And this is where the visa story comes full circle. Because whether Harry's visa records eventually reveal anything significant or not, he now has another reason to understand the importance of discretion. His past is already public. His words are already on the record. His decisions are already being examined. And once something is public, you can't put it back in the box. That's the lesson Harry may need to learn. Not everything has to become a story. Not every disagreement needs an explanation. Not every private conversation needs an audience. And perhaps that's the one thing Harry could do differently from now on. The real question isn't whether Harry is unlucky, because, let's be fair, sometimes Harry may genuinely be unlucky. Sometimes other people may misrepresent him. Sometimes stories about him may be exaggerated. The Martha Stewart controversy itself is a perfect example. There are conflicting accounts, and we don't have definitive proof of what was said. People.com. But when controversy follows you repeatedly, eventually you have to examine your own choices. Not because you're responsible for everything people say about you, but because you're responsible for what you do. And Harry has made a lot of choices. So, what should Harry do now? First, stop trying to control the narrative. Second, protect his relationship with Charles privately. Third, keep Meghan's relationship with the royal family separate from his own, if necessary. Fourth, stop discussing private family matters publicly. Fifth, accept that William may not forgive him quickly. And sixth, give the royal family time. Because Harry spent years telling everyone why he needed distance. He can't now expect everyone else to instantly adjust because he's ready to come closer. And maybe that's the real story behind Harry's latest problems. The visa records, the legal battles, the royal family, the Martha Stewart controversy, the endless questions about trust. On the surface, they look like completely separate stories. But underneath, they all lead back to the same issue. Trust. Can Harry be trusted with private information? Can he be trusted not to turn personal disagreements into public battles? Can he be trusted to keep his word? Can he rebuild his relationship with his father without dragging the entire world into it? Because King Charles may still love his son, and perhaps he always will. But love doesn't automatically erase consequences, and forgiveness doesn't automatically restore trust. Harry wanted freedom. He got it. But freedom came with choices, and those choices came with consequences. Now Harry appears to want something else, his family. And perhaps the only way he's going to get it is by doing the one thing he has rarely been willing to do in public. Stop talking about it. No more explanations, no more score settling, no more proving who was right. Just show up, be consistent, keep private things private, and let time do what interviews never could. Because maybe Harry doesn't need another big statement. Maybe he needs a quiet phone call to his father, and then another one, and another, until eventually the relationship isn't a headline anymore. It's simply a relationship. So, what do you think? Is Harry genuinely trying to rebuild his relationship with King Charles, or does he keep making choices that make reconciliation harder? And if you could give Harry one piece of advice right now, what would you tell him to do differently?